quietly into that dark night or something, however that
What?
goes. Don't go quietly into the night.
Who said that?
Tennessee Williams or Yates or Heinrich Himmler. One of those three. Dylan Thomas, maybe.
Oh, you're just dropping names.
Well, they're being thrown at me. I'm catching them. James Joyce. Yeah, big names. Big names, John. Got a lot of big names out
Bill
here
Levity
tonight.
said it on a stage one night.
He did. He did indeed.
That's what I remember. Hey, this is For the Love of Words anniversary, buddy.
Wow, indeed.
We're in our
it is.
12th year.
Well, after tonight we will be.
We've been doing this off and on, this whole banter every year, because
We
I
have.
still say that we're in our 12th year as of.
Right. Maybe halfway through the show, I guess, we start into your 12th year. Maybe now. You could be right.
But who would have thought, eh?
Who would have thunk it? I know. Hey, Tim, how you doing? Very good. Very sprightly.
Oh, look at this. The light goes on and
Oh,
everything.
thank you. Oh, you're a genius.
Classy.
Oh, what
We
a
didn't
guy.
have the fancy stairs out tonight because tomorrow in the afternoon we
Yeah.
have the U slash exclamation mark 9 youth group. You can't be an adult and you can't be a preteen. You can only be a teen.
Oh, that's great.
They've come to me and they've taken over the room for the afternoon. Well, for 4 to 6:30, they produce their show and everything, and we just do that. And then tomorrow night we go into electronica music.
Well, wait, they don't, on the other one, they don't want people of other ages in the audience either? It's just
No,
all...
it's not about.
Ooh.
No, they
That's
don't want to have
select.
to be wondering who's watching them.
Oh, okay, interesting. Nice, so no
But Tim and
cameras.
I are allowed to be teens.
Because you guys are officially cool. Because you look
'Cause we
like
are.
teens, yeah.
Hey, I was in Value Village today because it's that Tuesday, right? Tuesday, you get a third off. I didn't have to show ID, but she did question. She says, do you get the discount? I said, thank you very much. Turn around to the 5 people beside me. Do you get that? I got carded, sort of, at Value Village. That's a nice feeling.
That's a good feeling. Yeah,
Yeah.
and good value.
It is. No, I won't go there with that.
No, you won't? Okay.
No, I'll get it fixed. Anyway, 11th anniversary. That's pretty cool, Bill. Thank you for starting. Thanks for staying with it because there was so far, and we've broken it. You know,
We broke it and then
once
we fixed
bitten,
it?
twice shy, right?
Oh,
Third time will never happen.
what do you mean we broke it?
We closed down the Duncan Garage
Oh, right,
showroom.
the old curse, which we thought was a curse, but we
Right.
broke the curse. Okay, good.
Once bitten, twice shy.
Yes.
Third time will never happen.
Closed down the garage, last show,
Yeah,
and we,
they're at the one at the Silver Bridge.
which was a different kind of closing down.
Yeah, but
probably a good
that's
one.
okay. It was like you were the last show of that production.
That's a real special thing. And we had people come out there that have never come out to this venue because they're drinkers.
Yeah. Yeah, basically, right? But tonight, I want to appreciate the fact. Look at this. There's a lot of people here.
It's lovely, yes.
This is very cool.
Thank
to
you
see
all
this
for
happen.
coming.
Is it all just because of the anniversary? Cool.
The excitement? No, nice.
You're not going to do this every month?
No, forget it. No.
Well, I saw a lot of readers. You got a full list of readers tonight.
Well, I do. I hope I remember all their names, and if I
Good
don't,
luck. I'm not going to help you.
I'm almost sick.
If you ever need to remember a name, ask Tim. He remembers every name.
Tim's good at that, eh?
He's very good at that.
Because he's so young at heart.
And he'll want you to say good looking.
Good looking, young and good looking.
Yeah. Anyway, speaking of good looking, it's your turn, buddy. Bill Levity
Thank you.
hosting the 11th full year
11th birthday.
For the Love of Words. Give it up for him, please.
Thank you. Yes, it's been a lovely trajectory through the original Duncan Garage showroom to the Silver Bridge Inn, to the upstairs now Duncan Showroom, which was a very arduous climb for most of us, but kind of epic, and now to the current Duncan Showroom, which is a beautiful venue. And thanks to John and Tim and Georgia and all the people who make this happen. We have, as is his wont, we have one of the original members of the first show here, which is good. I won't tell you because maybe you'll remember who it is. And I just wanted to do a disclaimer, which I never do, I don't believe in, but sometimes it's hard as a poet to read works, if you're current or transitional lovers in the audience. And but I just want to say, I don't know what to say to that. Mark, what do I say? You must read what you must read. Back me up on that, will you? Oh, probably. Yeah, thanks. Okay, we'll see how this goes. Anyway, I have been writing a bit, which is nice. And I just wanted to thank the host for last month. And I kind of wore Mahalia's grandpa's shirt over top of my smooth cowboy shirt as a, what's that thing that you do? Homage to Mr. Andrew French for such a good hosting last month. And now, although he said that I roast the readers, which perhaps I do, certainly John and Mark and anybody who I think can handle it gets a little bit of a roasting, and it's just a sign of affection, I assure you. And but the thing he did that was really wonderful was that after the readers came up, he would say some very astute and kind of intricate things about what they had read, and as if he had actually paid attention, which I think he did. And he's an intelligent young fellow, and thank you very much, Andrew, for hosting. It was he was screamed and fought against it. I phoned him at the last minute. It was a terrible thing to do. One of our other co-hosts, Mr. Hadfield, was out of town, and Andrew, thanks a lot. I appreciate it. If you ever get to do it again, feel free to say to John, can I just draw the chairs into a circle? And John is like a master set dresser. He'll kill me for saying this, but you could. You'll put all the chairs up here, sure. Do it your way. Okay, welcome to For the Love of Words. I've rambled on enough now. Start the clock. You will be my default alligator. Always I am soaring above the clouds in this realm or that. Experience, daytime travails. The speech of others is more like the cacophony of birds. So that I know I am gaining elevation and trajectory towards bliss. For surely this earthly toil, taken with honest interest and dogged determination, is meant to propel us into some peaceful ether. I and the Christians on this at least can agree. Okay. This one you will recognize. Alabaster white, laying upon the pillow. I've been let go during the last drive to orgasm, muffled, eyes blocked. Light grasp around the neck. Even this was not enough to transform her anger of the day into pleasure. Perhaps if she'd been able to really let go, a dirty sock stuffed in my mouth, both hands wrapped around my neck, in a sincere attempt to strangle me, that would have been enough for a screaming orgasm, her last moment memorable, as I perished. This is written with love, I assure you. Gee, you're so quiet out there. Shocked, they're shocked. What's that? Who's the right? Oh, sorry, these are mine. Bill Levity, can you tell? Yeah. Whose sock was it? It should have been my own dirty, stinky sock. Soft touch, hands remembered, withdrawn, intense longing for soft alabaster skin, filleted lips of love on fire, the pale rider above me, intensity, longing, loss, forgiveness, and aloneness now. I'm just speed reading to see how much I can fit into 5 minutes. It's kind of a 5-minute format. Mark will pull me off if I go too long. Oh, so I'm going a bit too fast. I'm a little excited. I know, I'm a little excited. And I've been doing this for 11 years. Okay, I got to breathe on this one because this is about the new thing, you know, taking stock of life. Take the new era of yourself. Take arcane passages to places unknown and discover things, maybe things you did not know, starting with getting out of the house, believing that someone else besides will give you and you will be a boner still. Moving forward, you will be virile for many more years, and all will be well. The motorcycle era is upon us, and two wheels become us. Sure, it's very logical to get a motorcycle again when you're 58. It's my sports car. Oh. Wait a minute. Okay, here you go. George Clooney walks into a restaurant, says to the waiter, "Hey, what's the special?" The waiter says, "Prime rib, mashed potatoes, sour peas, and Yorkshire pudding." "Sour peas," says George. "What the hell are sour peas?" You see, says the waiter, you haven't even had them yet, and already you're complaining. That's why I'm not a joke writer. That's fine. Sure, you know. Okay. I'm skimming through here. I know. There's got to be one more in here I can read. Okay, this one's important. The prospective client phoned up tonight and said that his wife was having a little bit of trouble, not feeling that well, and could we postpone the renovation indefinitely? The one that I was going to tomorrow. And so I had that feeling. There was at first the moment of elation where it's like, I'm free, and then there was, oh God, what am I going to do? As if I wouldn't know what to do without work. Mortality and or physical disability, is it work related? Are you physically or mentally disabled, Mr. Davey? Can you show up for work today? Are you indignant about the deterioration of your physical strength and ability? Are you suffering mental distress because of your injuries? Has the injury affected your desire or your ability to copulate or masturbate? Or is your appetite affected? Are you looking forward to Christmas? More importantly, do you still find me sexy? How about a less strenuous career? The trouble with being an aging Peter Pan is that Peter Pan is not supposed to age, and the enormity of the joke you have played on yourself is horrendous and seemingly final, in the sense of your slow and painful decline and the great joke of your boy-like nature to others. Thank God for beer, I say, dark matter, and chicken on the way, potato skins, poutine. I struggled to get to the doctor's office and into the pharmacy, limping into the bar, decrepit, done. Give me drugs, manna from heaven, real cocaine if you have it, probably not. How about some mushrooms? I never get tired of those. Grow up at my age? I don't think so. That really translates as, get your affairs in order and prepare to die, so that your kid won't be stuck with your mess, you won't be an embarrassment to your friends and family, or your mother in heaven. Life knocks on the door, and this stubborn old man refuses to answer. Right, Mark? That'll show him, he mumbles. If you showed me a way to emerge as a cleaner, stronger, more refined animal, would I follow your 12-step program? Would I give up beer, you say? Beer is life, I say. Stop masturbating in front of open windows, you'd say. Drafts can be deadly. Stop acting as if you're 27 and invincible. Grow up. I doubt it. For those of you who have never been here before, we won't apologize for all the sex words, but you can read whatever you want. We frown on hate literature, I think is where we draw the line. Okay. So one who has been stalwart in many ways, Mr. Robert Nation, whom we know and love. Bob, stalwart. Well, isn't that the way you think of your husband? Stalwart? Good. Intrepid and stalwart.
I forgot my wife. It was all planned. Before I start my entertainment, Helen has a little poem that she just wrote about our life.
Yes.
This is autobiographical.
I wasn't going to read, but I
Use the mic.
Oh, Mike. I'm Mike. All right. This is to announce a change in our lifestyle. There was once a couple named Nation who wanted a change of location. They searched high and low, but found it no go. So Wedgwood became their new station. Therefore, and we're only 400 steps from the showroom.
We can now walk to the showroom. Now we get $1 back for the on the entrance tonight. So this is just an entertainment, I thought, but actually it's a novel, Canadian novel, And Alice Munro absolutely praised it as a serious and wonderful thing that she swallowed at one go. So I'm not going to argue with Alice Munro. I'll just read it. So it's the story of Beth. Beth is 17. She has no friends. Her life is beauty pageants. Sort of pushed by her mother, who wants her to achieve all the things that her mother never achieved. She's good at it. She just won $10,000 and was the beauty queen at a national level. And she and her mom are driving home. And the mother is planning the next steps in her career. I'm on the wrong page. Pause. It is a bit dark up here, Tim. Here we go. Beth watches her mother's face glowing with hope, as well as humidity. Her streaked hair piled carelessly up off her neck, damp wisps stuck to her forehead. Her hands on the steering wheel are scattered with tiny red heat dots. She keeps picking at her white cotton blouse, pulling it away from the moist skin of her breasts. She hikes her light denim driving skirt higher. The skin above her knees looks crackled like an old painting. The flesh of her thighs is dimpled and plump. What is this old woman doing, living Beth's life in her hoarse, on and on voice? Not that Beth has any better idea. Even Beth's mother is not indomitable, however. Even she gets worn out, worn down. By the time they're pulling into the driveway at home, she's complaining of a violent headache. When she goes upstairs to grab a quick shower and to change her clothes and to locate the aspirin, Beth stays downstairs. "I'll make tea," she says. And it takes a while, but she does. She is not subtle or delicate in her preparation, but she is certainly blinded by insistent, irresistible, unexplainable, indefensible purpose, impulse. At the first sip, her mother's mouth curls radically. "Oh, Beth, this is terrible stuff. It's undrinkable. What on earth is it? I know it doesn't taste good, but if you drink it down in one swallow, it'll fix you right up, I promise." And just like that, just because Beth says to, or because she doesn't think not to, Beth's mother does. It's like watching a movie about aliens, maybe. It involves some dissolution at the edges and borders, as if her mother, collapsing, heaving to the floor, is transformed from human form, with all its crumplings and winklings, and streaked hair and dotted flesh and bright lipstick, into some other unknown and unfamiliar, more wavery creature, all jellyfish and strange colors. Beth looks away. She tilts her head back, turning her attention upwards. Are there sounds? There must be. For sure there are smells. "Oh, dear God," says Beth's father when he gets home from work. Beth hears that. It doesn't seem to occur to him or to anyone, not even to the men who come in the ambulance, that anything about this is deliberate. Beth herself, they must suppose, is in shock, immobilized as she is in the kitchen, staring hard and determinedly up at that ceiling. They may be right about the shock. They take her arms and lead her outside and drive her to the hospital too. She makes no resistance. Anyway, she's too slight to resist burly men. At the hospital, her mother goes down one way, Beth goes another. In a very few hours, various people arrive in Beth's hospital room wearing strange expressions. They talk and talk to each other and to her. Her father comes too, several times. He is agitated. "Why?" he cries. But Beth cannot say. Also, he asks, "What did she do?" As if it were explained properly, to be able to put the blame on Beth's mother. Beth doesn't have words. She is surprised, too. She'd thought, insofar as she'd thought at all, that it would all be faster, easier. And then, well, she hadn't supposed consequences, just more a poof, a vanishing, more particularly a silencing. Who knew the contents of Mouse Killer, even vigorously mixed with extra strong tea, would be so stomach-wrenching, bowel-churning, lip-frothing? Also, who knew that they would be so immediately discernible inside the dead human body, which surely to God she never meant to be dead? Her awful, disastrous mistake. Somebody should have instructed her better about resisting swift, unconsidered compulsions, about consequences and flat, hard results, not just about skin toning and blush, straight hems and dripping necklines, tiaras and sashes, mink coats and pretty speeches about the importance of music. But it seems nobody ever mentioned cause and effect, action and reaction. Or if anyone did, she can't have been paying attention.
Just checking the finer details. Yes, I learned that from Longevity John himself, a detail man. Thank you, Bob, for that expertly rendered excerpt. We've had, sometimes authors will come and I think in the excitement of having written a short story, feel that they must read the entire thing, whether it takes 137 minutes or not, right, Mark? So it's always a wrestle to delicately try and convince someone that an excerpt is just as valuable. No, not, I wasn't speaking about John yet. So, no, it's a funny thing sometimes. Lee has something for us, and she has been here a few times. Also, she was a much valued, and maybe still is a much valued volunteer at the showroom. Lee, come on up.
I should do this. Yes, this I'm not used to.
No, I know. Try to forget it's there, but just be close.
Okay.
That's close enough.
All right.
Okay?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Good. Just over a year ago, I was digging through boxes of books that Long John had out the front. I came across this book. It's called A Book of Beauty. I thought, oh, that's interesting. I wonder what this anthology of words and pictures has to say about beauty. And upon looking further, I realized that it's compiled by John Hadfield. My idea of what I thought this book was about was quickly dashed when I read the very first paragraph of the introduction, which says, "A Book of Beauty, the title begs so many questions that I must first admit how few of them it answers. Let me say at once that this book does not seek to define that indefinable essence which we call beauty. Although I believe that most of the words and pictures and music here contained are beautiful, they are not to be taken as criteria of beauty or as representing the peaks of the limitless landscape of beauty." So I definitely approached the book differently than I thought I was going to begin with. I've just picked a couple of small poems that were beautiful to me. "The exceeding beauty of the earth in her splendor of life yields a new thought with every petal. The hours when the mind is absorbed by beauty are the only hours when we really live, so that the longer we can stay among those things, so much more is snatched from an inevitable time. These are the only hours that are not wasted, these hours that absorb the soul and fill it with beauty. This is real life, and all else is illusion or mere endurance. And it says it's by Richard Jefferies. This is called And Beauty Came Like the Setting Sun. Everyone suddenly burst out singing, and I was filled with such delight, as prisoned birds must find in freedom, winging wildly across the white orchards and dark green fields, on and out of sight. Everyone's voice was suddenly lifted, and beauty came like the setting sun. My heart was shaken with tears, and horror drifted away. Oh, but everyone was a bird, and the song was wordless. The singing will never be done. And that's by Sigrid Sassoon. And I have one more I'd like to read. This is called Water. Nothing is lovelier than moving water, the diamond element, innumerable jewel, brittle and splintering under the sharp sun, yet softer than dove's feathers and more smooth than down of swan. Nothing is lovelier than water lying still when the moon takes that stillness for her glass. And that's by Gerald Bullitt. Thank you.
Thank you, Lee. I did a rather vague advertisement on Facebook because I figured everybody would know what was going on, and apparently you people all do because you're here. And there was a picture of kittens and something about the birthday. But the thing I think I said that was clear was that it's imperative that you shut off your computers and your TVs and come. So thank you for coming out. You know, there's a lot of isolation in today's world with our self-entertainment and our little glowing boxes, so I appreciate you being here. David, a great addition to our crew. Come up and share something with us.
Is that close enough? I wish I could remember when this happened, the exact date, I mean. It's one of the events for which I would like to be able to mark the anniversary. I'm not exactly sure how I might do that, but it's nice to think that I might have been able to. It was sometime during the summer of 1997, and it was a Sunday. I'm sure of that because I had been looking forward to it all week. Ernesto looked worried as he walked across the compound towards me. He was one of our newer guards, and he was clearly concerned about my response to being disturbed that morning. I had, in fact, just sat down with a cup of coffee and a brand new book, which I had bought over a month before in Guatemala City, but had not yet had the chance to start. Finally, a Sunday, my one full day off, without visitors from the capital, or a special meeting, or some such other nonsense. Having been in country for a year and a half now, I knew all too well how rare that was. I had sat down on the veranda, opened up my new Vargas Llosa novel, and immediately saw Ernesto trotting over from the gate. I suppose the look on my face did not help put him at ease much. He stood in front of me and fiddled nervously with the oversized flashlight he was holding. Hardly necessary, given that it was a cloudless tropical morning. I suppose he felt more secure talking to people at the gate holding it. It was the closest thing to a weapon that he had, considering the policy of Doctors Without Borders concerning unarmed guards. I put my book aside, waiting for Ernesto to tell me how my day off was about to end before it had even started. He opened his mouth to explain, but before he had said a word, over his shoulder, I saw the gate swing open and a shiny new BMW pull into the compound. Ernesto glanced at it, then back at me, helplessly, I told him he couldn't come in until I checked with you. I couldn't really blame Ernesto. In my experience, people who drove new BMWs in rural Guatemala were not accustomed to listening when people said they couldn't do something. Although I did suggest that it might be a good idea to secure the latch on the gate before walking away from it in the future. I stood up to see who our visitors were and what they wanted. A man, clearly from the city to judge by his clothes, jumped out of the passenger side and began immediately to shout orders to the compound in general. This did not have the effect he had hoped for, since, this being a Sunday, Ernesto and I were the only ones in view, and no one rushed to do his bidding. Not that I could easily tell what his bidding was. He was so agitated his speech was almost unintelligible. When he saw me, the man looked visibly relieved. He strode toward me, indicating the vehicle. "Quick, quick! It's coming now!" He grabbed my arm and pulled me toward the rear of the car. He opened the door, and I saw a woman, well, a girl actually, perhaps not even 13, lying on the back seat. She was panting, and her eyes rolled with terror. Her skirt, once bright with embroidery, now dull with age and dirt, was soaking, sticking to her legs. She was on the verge of giving birth. Even here in Guatemala, where I had seen many young mothers, she seemed hardly more than a child to me. I took her hand and tried the one or two phrases of Quiché that I knew. It probably wasn't her dialect, but it seemed to calm her a little. The man behind me was trying to get my attention. "Doctor, please." Here was the problem I faced often. Working as I did with Doctors Without Borders, most people assumed, reasonably enough, that I was a doctor. I am not. In fact, I am a water and sanitation engineer. At that moment, I decided not to try to explain this to the gentleman. I just said, "Help us get her out of the car, and we will take care of her." The truth was, I was not at all sure how we were going to take care of her. Elsa, the only doctor on base that weekend, had told me earlier that she planned to go to the market that morning, and I hadn't seen her for the last hour. My pre-mission orientation had not included instructions on delivering babies. As Ernesto and the city man's driver carried the girl into the office, I wondered if there were any how-to manuals on the shelf. You never know. MSF is pretty thorough with its documentation. As I was fumbling on with a pair of latex gloves, I heard the car exit and the gate swing shut behind it. Elsa appeared. She had been in the shower when the commotion began, and I was gratefully demoted to assistant. The base housed our living accommodations and administration office, and was not set up to attend patients. Since there was no treatment room, I lay some blankets on the office floor and set up a couple of desk lamps for lighting. We had barely time to lay the girl down when she gave birth. I was stunned by how quick it was. Elsa handed me the baby, a girl, and I wrapped her in a towel and stood holding her, staring at her. I was holding a human being who was less than 30 seconds old. I was the first person to look into her eyes. I felt an expansiveness, as if my chest had opened up to accommodate a heart so huge it ached. Elsa, busy tending to her mother, asked me how the baby looked. I wasn't exactly sure what she was supposed to look like. She looks okay, I said, but is she supposed to be covered in cottage cheese like this? Elsa didn't look up. Yeah, that's okay, that's usual. But she's not crying. Is she breathing normally? Again, I wasn't sure what constituted normal when it came to baby breathing. I slipped my hand under the towel and laid it on her chest. I could feel the rise and fall of her breathing and her heartbeat against my palm. She's breathing okay, I said, gently rocking the baby. I'm just amazed at how quickly it was all over. Elsa looked up at me this time, with one eyebrow raised. Well, you know it's not quite over yet, don't you? She said, more than a little incredulous. They never show you what comes next in the movies. It's all, here it comes, and one last push, and then the pink and cheeseless baby appears. Close up on the happy parents, and it's all over. They never show you the part with the placenta. I guess I knew about it in theory, but in reality it came as a bit of a surprise. The placenta was actually an important part given the circumstances. For the Mayan people, the placenta plays a crucial spiritual role. It is seen as the little sister of the baby and must be ceremoniously buried near where the child will live in order to ensure that she will be properly connected to the land and her people. As we were finishing up, the girl's family arrived. Her grandmother and a couple of brothers, having realized the girl left the village, had followed behind her, a long walk for the grandmother. I tried to hand the baby to the old woman, but she refused, urgently repeating something to me. One of the men translated into Spanish for me. She was apparently giving me the baby, telling me to take it home with me to America. I said that no, I could not take the baby, but the old lady refused to hold her, and it was only when another young girl from the village appeared that anyone agreed to take her. The family arranged transport back to the village, and everyone, including the new mother, left within an hour. As they were preparing to leave the compound, Elsa offered them a package wrapped in plastic, the baby's placenta. The old woman waved it away impatiently. We watched them drive away, all in the back of a beaten-up pickup, Elsa still holding the package. I wondered what the grandmother's refusal to take it had meant, and felt a deep sense of foreboding for this newborn girl beginning life, having left her little sister behind.
Thank you, David. Wonderful story. We've really enjoyed your additions to our crew. And not only that, but you validated a craziness in my past that now I feel like I'm not such a nut. When my daughter was born, Shawnigan Players were in the middle of a 5-play festival in Shawnigan Lake, and I arrived at Amigo's Blue Guitar in time for the opening of the play. It was the last night of the festival. And in my arms, I was cradling an ice cream bucket with Emily's placenta. And I thought, well, I can't bring Emily to the play. I'm going to bring the placenta. And I kind of kept it as a secret. And at the party, to celebrate the festival, I was going around gleefully telling people what was in the bucket and showing them. And I think I shocked quite a few people. But now that you say this many years later, it's like makes complete sense to me that I was so attached to the gift, the little sister. So that's very interesting. I mean, I am a nut, but that makes me feel a little more connected to the human race. Thank you. You can do a lot with a short story. And I know a lot of you are wrestling with spiritual questions this time of year. Does God exist? How much should I spend on my mother-in-law's gift, et cetera, et cetera. But I don't know if elves exist. I know that sprites exist, and our next reader is a living sprite. Mariana? Do you want to stand? Oh, yeah. Okay, I fixed the mic for you.
That's something what I haven't heard this year, that I'm a living sprite. So I will see if I can live up to that. Yes, hearing about stories of babies coming into this world from the spiritual pathway of the rainbow, and about beauty, and yes, creating something within what connects us all. And when in my tradition where I grew up, there was always that spirit of someone is watching you, or someone is close by and taking also care of you. And so I would like to share one poem which is composed in a song with you. So many angels it's you I see. So many angels walking around. So many angels, it's you I found. It's you I found. Thank you.
Thank you, Mariana. Maybe one more, and then we'll take a break. Hopefully, you will all stick around. Is John nearby? Mr. Longevity, if we have a break after this one, serve some tea. Any cookies, chips? What have we got to offer the crew? Lots. Okay. That was time for the sales pitch. John Stephen, would you like to come up and share something with us? Why? Well, why? Every year I ask that. Why is there no birthday cake? Should I bring my own? I think I did one year, but I did, didn't I? Yeah. And then I thought, well, surely someone will think of it. Well, that's okay. Come on up.
Hello. I'd like to read a selection from the opening scene of Oscar Wilde's The Importance of Being Earnest. The subtitle to the piece is A Farcical Play for Serious People. It's just have to step into the middle of the scene here just to try to keep within the 5 minutes or as close to it as I can. Just very briefly, this is the main characters in this part of the scene are two young men. We could see that they are well placed in society and much dedicated to enjoying themselves. The two main speakers are Algernon and his friend, who sometimes goes by the name of Jack and sometimes by the name of Ernest. And also there is Algernon's manservant Lane, who appears from time to time. So we'll just step into the middle of a conversation here. Why is it that this is Algernon. Why is it that at a bachelor's establishment the servants invariably drink the champagne? I ask merely for information. And Lane replies, I attribute it to the superior quality of the wine, sir. I have often observed that in married households the champagne is rarely of a first-rate brand. Good heavens, is marriage so demoralizing as that? I believe it is a very pleasant state, sir. I have had very limited experience of it myself up to the present. I've only been married once, and that was in consequence of a misunderstanding between myself and a young person. I don't know that I am much interested in your family life, Lane. Yes, no, sir. It is not a very interesting subject. I never think of it myself. Very natural, I am sure. That will do, Lane. Thank you. Thank you, sir. Lane's views on marriage seem somewhat lax. Really, if the lower orders don't set us a good example, what on earth is the use of them? They seem as a class to have absolutely no sense of moral responsibility. And Lane enters again and announces, Mr. Ernest Worthing. And Jack enters. Algernon, how are you, my dear Ernest? What brings you up to town? Oh, pleasure, pleasure. What else should bring one anywhere? Eating as usual, I see, Algy. I believe it is customary in good society to take some slight refreshment at 5 o'clock. Where have you been since last Thursday? In the country. What on earth do you do there? When one is in town, one amuses oneself. When one is in the country, one amuses other people. It is excessively boring. And who are the people you amuse? Oh, neighbors, neighbors. Got nice neighbors in your part of Shropshire? Perfectly horrid. Never speak to one of them. How immensely you must amuse them. By the way, Shropshire is your country, is it not? Eh? Shropshire? Oh, yes, of course. Hello. Why all these cups? Why cucumber sandwiches? Why such reckless extravagance in one so young? Who is coming to tea? Oh, merely Aunt Augusta and Gwendolen. Oh, how perfectly delightful. Yes, that is all very well, but I'm afraid Aunt Augusta won't quite approve of your being here. May I ask why? My dear fellow, the way you flirt with Gwendolen is perfectly disgraceful. It is almost as bad as the way Gwendolen flirts with you. I am in love with Gwendolen. I have come up to town expressly to propose to her. I thought you had come up for pleasure. I call that business. How utterly unromantic you are. I really don't see anything romantic in proposing. It is very romantic to be in love, but there is nothing romantic about a definite proposal. Why, one may be accepted. One usually is, I believe. Then the excitement is all over. The very essence of romance is uncertainty. If ever I get married, I'll certainly try to forget the fact. I have no doubt about that, dear Algie. The divorce court was specially invented for people whose memories are so curiously constituted. Oh, there is no use speculating on that subject. Divorces are made in heaven. Please don't touch the cucumber sandwiches. They are ordered especially for Aunt Augusta. Well, you have been eating them all the time. That is quite a different matter. She is my aunt. Have some bread and butter. The bread and butter is for Gwendolen. Gwendolen is devoted to bread and butter. And very good bread and butter it is, too. Well, my dear fellow, you need not eat as if you were going to eat at all. You behave as if you were married to her already. You are not married to her already, and I don't think you ever will be. Why on earth do you say that? Well, in the first place, girls never marry the men they flirt with. Girls don't think it right. Oh, that is nonsense. It isn't. It is a great truth. It accounts for the extraordinary number of bachelors that one sees all over the place. In the second place, I don't give my consent. Your consent? My dear fellow, Gwendolen is my first cousin, and before I allow you to marry her, you will have to clear up the whole question of Cecily. Cecily? What on earth do you mean? What do you mean, Algie, by Cecily? I don't know anyone by the name of Cecily. And Lane, the servant, enters. Algernon says, "Bring me that cigarette case Mr. Worthing left in the smoking room the last time he dined here." "Yes, sir." And Jack replies, "Do you mean to say that you have had my cigarette case all of this time? I wish to goodness you had let me know. I have been writing frantic letters to Scotland Yard about it. I was very nearly offering a large reward." "Well, I wish you would offer one. I happen to be more than usually hard up." "There is no good offering a large reward now that the thing is found." And Lane enters with the cigarette case and passes it to Algernon, who says, "I think that is rather mean of you, Ernest, I must say. However, it makes no matter, for now that I look at the inscription inside, I find that the thing isn't yours at all. Of course it's mine. You have seen me with it 100 times, and you have no right whatsoever to read what is written inside. It is a very ungentlemanly thing to read a private cigarette case. Oh, it is absurd to have a hard and fast rule about what one should read and what one shouldn't. More than half of modern culture depends on what one shouldn't read. I am quite aware of the fact, and I don't propose to discuss modern culture. It isn't the sort of thing one should talk of in private. I simply want my cigarette case back." "Yes, but this isn't your cigarette case. The cigarette case is a present from someone of the name of Cecily, and you said you didn't know anyone of that name." "Well, if you want to know, Cecily happens to be my aunt." "Your aunt?" "Yes, a charming old lady she is too, lives at Tunbridge Wells. Just give it back to me, Algie." But why does she call herself Little Cecily if she is your aunt and lives at Tunbridge Wells?" "From Little Cecily, with fondest love." "My dear fellow, what on earth is there in that? Some aunts are tall, some aunts are not tall. That is a matter that surely an aunt may be allowed to decide for herself. You seem to think that every aunt should be exactly like your aunt. That is absurd. For heaven's sake, give me back my cigarette case." "Yes, but why does your aunt call you her uncle?" "From Little Cecily, with fondest love to her dear Uncle Jack." There is no objection, I admit, to an aunt being a small aunt, but why an aunt, no matter what her size may be, should call her own nephew her uncle, I can't quite make out. Besides, your name isn't Jack at all. It is Ernest." "It isn't Ernest, it's Jack." "You have always told me it was Ernest. I have introduced you to everyone as Ernest. You answer to the name of Ernest. You look as if your name was Ernest. You are the most earnest-looking person I ever saw in my life. It is perfectly absurd your saying that your name isn't Ernest. It's on your card. Here is one of them. Mr. Ernest Worthing, B4, the Albany. I'll keep this as a proof that your name is Ernest. if you ever attempt to deny it to me, or to Gwendolyn, or to anyone else. Well, my name is Ernest in town and Jack in the country, and the cigarette case was given to me in the country. Yes, but that does not account for the fact that your small Aunt Cecily, who lives at Tunbridge Wells, calls you her dear uncle. Come, old boy, you had better have the thing out at once. My dear Algy, you talk exactly as if you were a dentist. It is very vulgar to talk like a dentist when one isn't a dentist. It produces a false impression. Well, that is exactly what dentists always do. Now go on. Tell me the whole thing. I may mention that I have always suspected you of being a confirmed and secret Bunburyist, and I am quite sure of it now. Bunburyist? What on earth do you mean by a Bunburyist? I'll reveal to you the meaning of that incomparable expression as soon as you are kind enough to inform me why you are Ernest in town and Jack in the country. Well, produce my cigarette case first. Here it is. Now produce your explanation, and pray make it improbable. And the conversation continues in like manner from there. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Man, that's good writing. Holy moly. What was that written, John? Turn of the last century. And has the state of marriage changed much since then? I don't know. Well, let's have a break, and not too long, but some tea or chips or maybe cookies and a little stretch of your legs. And then don't go away. We've got scintillating readers for you in the second half. Thank you. And Mark.
They call me a troubadour. I don't mind, I'm a troubadour. Always wanted to be a troubadour. They call us troubadours.
Time for us all to be thinking about getting back into our seats as we want to progress with this show, get it on the go, keep the flow going. Get it? Keep the flow going.
Keep the flow going.
Yeah.
I
What do you
know.
think of this, Black?
It's really good, and Tim was saying it works amazingly, as you said.
It grabs
with
the lights, you know.
the band and the lights, and yeah, it's more
All
dramatic.
sorts. It's dramatic, heavy on the dramatic. Nothing like drama.
There's nothing like drama.
No. We won't go there.
Uh,
Everybody ready?
they look keen, as Mariana said. Keep the flow going. You
Now,
said
one
that.
of the things about the showroom, which I really appreciate, is all the way along, this was designed for Willie P. Bennett. On the whole concept of the showroom was that we would have attentive audiences around to listen to whatever it was that we were putting on. And the people would not engage in conversation throughout or anything like that. And tonight is a perfect example of what happens when that takes effect. You can hear popcorn hit the floor, except we don't have any popcorn tonight.
No. What's going on with the popcorn?
I didn't make any.
Oh, okay.
I wasn't expecting 20 people or so.
No, this is
No,
wonderful.
it could have been, birthday parties and all,
Yeah. Sometimes.
But you have been on Facebook telling it.
Just selling those cats.
Selling those cats. Those are beautiful little kittens. Which one's Flo? You confused a bunch of people.
I did.
That's
Even
good.
Greg.
So they're all here to find out what you meant.
That's right.
Either that or they're trying to get a kitten.
Free
The
kittens.
draw for the kittens will be later.
Kittens are in the green room. Yes.
Yeah. Anyway, Bill Levity, take it over again one more time.
It got in. Oh, thank goodness. Lexi or the other? It was Lexi. Oh, goodness.
And this is great.
Oh, here he comes.
Thank you to Lexi. Big challenge.
Yes.
Lexi does what's going on in the valley. So she mentioned your show,
Yes.
Flo. She mentioned the Duncan Showroom with the Mahones.
Great.
Doing the dry show here and the wet show at the Ramada.
Right. Good.
Wherever that goes. And they also mentioned that two local island girls won Joeys this year.
And what's the joy again?
A Joey is it's an award for young film people.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, and one of the girls was the dancer. Her mom owns a Cal Bay pub. Yes, Laura Gilbert. She won an award. And you know who else won an award?
No.
Brooklyn Chalmers.
Brooklyn Chalmers.
That's my granddaughter.
Oh, really?
Won her first Joey this
Yay.
year for an independent documentary that she did.
Oh, nice
She
work.
starred in. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
We were both in the same paper at the same time.
Oh, brilliant.
Yes.
Yes.
The beginning.
We love those grandkids. Yeah, well, thanks to Lexi. We don't have a lot of press coverage these days, but occasionally it happens. I did mention this dapper young fellow earlier, and I also would like to mention that he, Mr. Andrew French Twizzle, and Rachel Lena French Twizzle co-host a spoken word event at the wonderful La Vie Cafe on Canada Ave, where Gray and her mother make wonderful vegan treats and foods. So that's the second Tuesday of the month, and it's a different style, kind of an intimate circle with no lights or cameras. So please encourage people to come out and read at that event. Always the second Tuesday at 7 p.m., isn't it, Andrew? Right. Yeah, welcome, Mr. Andrew French Twizzle, which is a thing you do with your hair when you're... And I wanted to ask you, Andrew, is a man, would he call it a button-up sweater or a button-down sweater? I'm not sure. If it buttons... I like to tease Andrew, and there's a beautiful shot of him pruning at Rachel's at your dad's, and he's wearing a button-up sweater, and I thought, how does he get away with that? And no twigs. I mean, I would be a mess, but you just look great.
So there's enough readers tonight, eh?
Oh, don't cut yourself short, fella.
Eh.
No, come on. We want the whole you.
I'll still try to keep it short. I was going to read one. I read it at Cafe La Vie a little while ago because I applied for a job, and it was about getting off the roof. And I actually did get off the roof, and I started my new job on Saturday. Yes, thank you. So right after this, I get to go work a night shift, which is amazing. Pardon me? What, no beer? No. Well, maybe at work. Yeah, so either which way, I'll keep it short.
What is your new job?
Mental health and addictions worker. Yeah. Yeah, it's up at Wix. Yeah, it's pretty chill. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, he is. Yeah. Oh, I probably shouldn't say that. Probably shouldn't say that.
Well, I would have asked you privately later.
Okay. Good. Okay, lovely. Thank you. All right, on with the show. So his brother has a long list of domestics, and his boss is a fascist, and his father is a non-entity whose absence haunts more than it hurts. And his hobbies placate, but they leave him unfulfilled, and the windows of his apartment face westward, and he's never been off the island. And the dishes are clean, but it's only 'cause supper will have to wait until the next payday, and he's been on the 4th floor because of the stress. And there's a dull pain in his chest, and it could be cancer, or it could be a lung infection, or the onset of flu, or a spinal cord out of sync. And he suspects that the hearing in his left ear is on its way out, and there's a throbbing ache in the pit of his stomach, and it could be existential angst, or it could be indigestion. And the bucolic scenes and the pastoral songbirds invoke little of him, and basking by the riversides just leave him dry. And there's only bills in the mailbox, and his hair is receding, and his frame is getting a little bit frumpy. And the other commuters are cutthroat, and the gas station clerks are always surly. And his smile is uncertain, and he drives a coughing wreck. And he's just trying to keep it together, with a travel mug and an 1/8 tank of gas. With a vague plan for higher education, a girl who smiles at him occasionally across the counter of the Tim Hortons. So if you see him in gridlock of cars just trying to get home, be kind and let him in. Because even though they all look like schmoes, everyone you see is fighting a hard battle. I'm trying to get away from spite. That's as close as I'm getting. This is Jonah when the thing sleeps. I've always kind of had a thing for Jonah and the whale. I don't know why. All my favorite biblical stories are ones about where people kind of get messed up. So like Job and all the rest. So this is kind of about Jonah, I guess. Shimmy away from the belly, but you still can't evade the beast. And you could skirt along the skin as to try as not to disturb the nerves. All the same, you'll feel the bones crack when the thing contracts its muscles to breathe. And it's black bile and dark nights, lighting damp matches, a poor excuse for the stars. Yeah, and this is probably the last. It would have to enter through the epidermis, push past millions upon millions of animal cells, through the accumulation of fat and whatever muscles you've acquired. It would have to gnaw through the nervous system, the cardiovascular, and whatever specific organs that obstructs its way of entry. All of which doesn't even take into account the hard argument necessary to make it past one's skeleton. So whenever someone advises you to just let love in, let them know there's a whole lot of matter sitting in the way of that whole procedure. No, I'm chill, man. Don't worry about it. All right, I'll just read one more and then we'll be done. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, so I tried playing basketball in the summer, and it didn't work so well. I used to play basketball and sports and all that jazz, and I used to be relatively good. And then I think 2 weeks ago, a couple of friends of mine made me go to the gym. And I tried getting on the treadmill, and like I smoke cigarettes pretty copiously, and they were coming back up to haunt me. It was terrible. And it's kind of just about, I don't know if it's aging or not, or if I just take terrible care of myself, but this is kind of about that. It's Kelowna City Park. So it's too early to be in the state I'm in and too late to die young. This I learnt in a basketball court in Kelowna. I flicked my wrist to deliver air ball after air ball and felt a strange rattling in my ankle whenever I tried to jump. Still, I broke into a hustle to reclaim the ball whenever it fell into the bleachers and stood out of breath and inept, but ready to return to the court all the same. Yeah.
Thank you, Andrew. And Gray, did you say you had something to share? Ah, come on.
This is a book that Nefton gave my dad a couple years ago, and it is full of poems from Vietnam during the war, and they've been translated. So this one is called A Small Son of Peace. I listen as you read from the pages of truth. Strange that men everywhere are alike. They left their leisure to tell the schoolboy tales. In one place, war rages on. In another, men congratulate each other on peace. Down through the years, the blood rolls on. Tell me, what century hasn't burned its millions and more? Rifles firing, bombs exploding, and a fine rain falling over the face of the earth. One part of the earth engulfed in that rain, and in another, in 10,000 accents, men sing songs of peace. When I was a young man, I watched through the land flooded in fire. Now I slap my thigh and laugh, drink beer above the high tower of Octagino, and the battlefield is a soiled and distant place. Tonight, across the earth, people turn up their wide faces all over the sacred continents, Africa, Asia, Nicaragua. Nights of smoke and fire hurts like houses burning. We have a calm and happy house everywhere. Someone enjoys some calm. In Palestine, where the earth is scarred and burned, where soldiers' bones are strewn across the roads, and men died in suicidal ambushes. When the fighting stops, they are only all victims, and the war criminals, after all the murder and killing, they go on living right out in the open. They look so like normal people, the rich and the cunning. Every age has brought its madmen. How many temples have they destroyed to bring about the changes? How to guess how many of their own they slaughtered? The madness of war passed down through generations. How many blood battles can these old pine trees lay claim to? How many mad years, how many mad months, how many mad days? The fire still burning in the tender green shoots. 1 mad second, the smallest kernel of time, all that is necessary, just 1 moment, 1 missing second. Enough to burn the entire world, nothing that's ever been born, no man left, no subjects left, no human beings remaining. The face of the earth barren, nothing likely to survive. Are our voices calm, or are they dissembling? Is this the thread of a prayer, or is this the only music? How many years may the earth survive? How many years may temples live in the shadows of cities? We slap our thighs and drink beer, 1/2 kilometer above the earth's surface. Towers send pictures end over end. Over our old heads, space stations, information satellites. Over our old heads, space shuttles and cosmonaut stations. Over our old heads, the stars rain. We fearlessly feel this distance is narrowing. The immaterial waves of electricity go searching, but they don't lie. The basis of any intelligent literature is to seek the basis of others. People of this world wish to meet people from outer space. Things once thought unbelievable have come true. How much time wasted to go back, not the time of armies, of policemen, of border guards, of frontiers, but of men and women living free in unity, free of worry. We want change, but truth is crucial. These nations face those as enemies. One group annihilates another. How do the people of the earth reach out to each other across those great distances? How to plow down those incorporeal distances? How to understand an electrical current? How do the ions alternately collide and pass through each other? Suddenly tossed in mid-air, we pass through between heaven and earth. We skim by the soft white clouds dusting them. Past the ravines of Mercury, its hills spotted with traces of steels. You and I can remember our small conquests there, but how do we know what they are doing? We keep on entering the old frames, singing our boyhood songs. Under the umbrella of your sharp tones and my hard voice, the nerves in our brains rising, together we sing these tunes of peace. Oraculous voices draw everyone to us, the hope of man dissolving in all these tensions. All over earth, the hope of faith returns, only love poems now, and news of love.
Thank you, Gray. What year was it that written in, or were they from different years?
Somewhere between 1948 and 93.
Oh wow, so quite a diverse range. Yeah. Yes, let's hope they don't return to war. This young fellow has transformed himself from a family doctor into a rambling poet and humanitarian traveler. And he was at the very first, we called it a poetry slam. It wasn't a poetry slam. The very first show in November of 2007 at the original Duncan Garage. And it was mostly a rock show with my rock and roll friends, Reed Williams and Andrew Wilson. And we were playing poetic music, I suppose, loudly. And the only person who actually read was Stephen Faulkner. So thank you for coming back on the birthday, Stephen.
see a little bit more, not much. Yes, so good to see everyone out again. And I thank you for talking about delivering babies. And I was thinking how I think I've delivered over 400 babies in my career. Each one of them was a miracle. Always amazing to be there. So I haven't been writing much poetry for several months, and then a month ago I was just happily going about my life here in Duncan, and then I got the phone call from my sister that my dear mother was passing away in New Zealand, 91, and so 3 days later I was on a jet plane and getting off at Mangere Airport in Auckland, and a very surreal experience going into spring and seeing the blossoms and the daffodils coming out of the fall here. But anyway, this is what I wrote about my mother, and I was taken by her face. I got to see, we have the open casket quite a lot. We wake the body, bring our loved one into the living room, and they stay there for 3 days, 4 days. But in this case, Mum was didn't get that opportunity, but I did get to see her embalmed body 4 days later. So it's called My Mother's Face. What's in a face at age 91, especially a deceased one? So many lines and fissures travelling north to south, some sloping and leaning towards a central axis, like dying trees in a flooded rainforest. And nasolabial sagging, the ravages of gravity and orbicularis muscle wasting, a vertical forehead frown from years of inquiry and frustration. So many stories contained in the endless possibilities of muscle configurations and contractions. Young connective tissue is able to mask so much. No tissue laxity to reveal the truth of trauma. Sticks and stones will break my bones, but names will etch my brow forever. Only age will weary them before life sunsets and expose the languorous lines of hidden tension accumulated from the vicissitudes of life. It's all there, a library of documented evidence leaning along a central line flowing towards the inevitable. North to heaven, south to the earth. Only in death is the struggle revealed. Death of an idea, a belief, a story. Death of muscle contractions. Death of the physical body. And there it is, laid bare for those who wish to see the true narrative that shaped those lines. What before was imagined is now known. Relaxation is as revealing as contraction. Death reveals life, the mask uncovered. Peaceful at last, the struggle against entropic stories is over. She went as far as she could go, and then the lines were gone. A cherubic smile of non-commitment, a bodhisattva of possibilities, wisdom at last and stillness. The countenance divine shining forth from my own clouded hills, my brow forever frowning with old stories flowing through my myosin fibrils. What will my death mask reveal? I see it clearly at my mother's casket on the 4th day. The etchings have subsided, revealing a preparing soul leaving the physical body for the angelic realm. Blake had it right. Eternity's in love with the productions of time. So much energy required to sculpt those facial expressions. And for what purpose? A last judgment, perhaps? A revelation for grieving loved ones? Death is the last great acceptance, the last relaxation, the last transformation, the last exhalation, the last hurrah. The soul has completed its work in this body. Sometimes it leaves immediately. Get me out of here fast. Sometimes it lingers, reluctant to abandon this mothership. The death mask will reveal it all over 4 days. Don't rush it. It needs time to choose its next abode, perhaps in you, perhaps in a relative, perhaps an unsuspecting infant. Eternity is full of souls scrambling to find a desirable body, to spend another lifetime. Much fewer, though, who decide enough is enough and teach from the beyond. Incarnating is very messy and distracting. The needs of a physical body in the sea of time and space is all-consuming, so face-etching, so wearying. And so my mother's soul is returning to the eternal realm, wiser and fuller than when it arrived. Those facial etchings now unburdened from earthly duties and relegated to the walls of the mansions of paradise. God bless you, Mum, for showing me a way to live this lifetime, and for being a loving mother, and for seeing me for who I always was, an eternal being, a pilgrim, passing through this material world for a while, on loan from the ancient ones and the world of Om. Until we meet again, love you forever, Stephen. So that's a little reflection on visiting my mother at the funeral. Yeah, thank you. So this is just to bring you up a little bit. The history of New Zealand is there's a lot of warfare happened in New Zealand with first contact, and my cousin is part Maori, and I went to visit her, and she lives near a marae and beautiful bay, gorgeous setting on the ocean. And I love to go and visit her and stay there, and it always gets me writing. And she was telling me about the wars that had happened, the murders that had happened down on that beach. And so there was the first contact with the Maori, with the Pākehā, where the white people were the Pākehā. It was a lot of bloodshed. So here's a little bit of that. Pūrakanui is the name of the little bay, just north of Dunedin. Such a teal green, aqua blue ocean flowing into Pūrakanui Bay. Grandmother Moon is doing her gravitational work while I do mine with the ancient ones in the eternal realm. Hank, my male mother spirit, Ursula, my bossy sister, Elihu, my warrior spirit, and Angela, my angel. There must be others, but these will do for now. So many Maori ancient ones resided here too, my European eyes yet oblivious to the signs. But the stories fascinate me, of harmonious times and peaceful coexistence, followed by sudden fatal interactions of misunderstandings and conflict. No one wants to die, yet how do we begin to fathom what actions will set the karmic wheel of early death in motion? Especially in the early days of James Cook had an inkling of what his discoveries would lead to, and he paid the price, an early death from hubris and fatigue. He did not need to make that third voyage, but duty and fame called. The meeting of Maori and Pākehā was fraught from the beginning. Trading, deception, bartering, stealing, disease, differing worldviews, guns, navigation. What were the choices of peaceful coexistence? World history of colonization by dominant powers is replete with grief and anguish for the conquered. Patriarchal versus matriarchal. Male invaders ignore the wise women, and it's downhill from there. The unbalanced nature of the uninitiated male psyche is destroying the planet. Half men are running the world's corporations. Western capitalism hiding in corporate sky towers, spreading its bottom line mentality to the developing world. We must learn to live together as brothers and sisters, or we will die together as fools. We are heading this way inexorably, heating the oceans, acidifying, plasticizing. How will it end? Here in Purakanui Bay, there is no hint of distress in me or the ocean. I carry on perceiving and conceiving, transported from my Canadian rainforest island to my birthland island by the death of my 91-year-old mother. I would never have organized this visit. Not now. I had other plans. God laughs. Om, the great mystery, directed me here, and I am thankful for this out-of-time moment in this sunny breeze by the ocean on the edge of the South Pacific, where Maori and Pākehā spirits now coexist in harmony. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. We appreciate your coming back again and again to contribute. Mahalia, did you have something you want to read?
Hello. I was at Cafe La Vie today, and Gray asked me, "Are you going to Flow?" And I was like, "What?" And she said, "Flow." And I didn't realize Flow was happening today. So I picked up this National Geographic, and I started reading, trying to find something to read. And I found something to read, and I'm going to read it. The first time I saw the granite panels, the place was frighteningly close to what I thought it should be, recalls designer Maya Lin. It terrified me to have an idea that was solely mine be no longer a part of my mind, but totally public. I had designed the memorial for a seminar on funerary architecture my senior year at Yale. After our class read about an open competition for the design, we had already been questioning what a war memorial is, its purpose, its responsibility. Many earlier war memorials were propagandized statements about the victor, the issues, the politics, and not about the people who served and died. I felt a memorial should be honest about the reality of war and be for the people who gave their lives. For a strong and sobering feeling, it should carry their names. I didn't want a static object that people would just look at, but something they could relate to as on a journey or passage that would bring each to his own conclusions. I was mulling these ideas, but I had no form. Then I went to this site. I had been home for Thanksgiving in Athens, Ohio, and decided to stop in Washington. I walked around this beautiful park surrounded by trees. People were tossing a frisbee. I wanted to work with the land and not dominate it. I had an impulse to cut open the earth, an initial violence that in time would heal. The grass would grow back, but the cut would remain a pure, flat surface, like a geode when you cut into it and polish the edge. I didn't visualize heavy physical objects implanted in the earth. Instead, it was as if the black-brown earth were polished and made into an interface between the sunny world and the quiet, dark world beyond that we can't enter. At Yale, I sketched the idea and worked it up in clay. It seemed almost too simple. Then I reread details about the competition requirements. All names of those killed and missing must be part of the material. The design must be apolitical and harmonious with the site, It was perfect. The names would become the memorial. There was no need to embellish. I chose black granite to make the surface reflective and peaceful. The angle was formed solely in relation to the Lincoln Memorial and Washington Monument to create a unity between the nation's past and present. My professor thought the design was too strong, but wanted me to enter anyway. I didn't consider that it might win. Later, when I visited, I searched out the name of a friend's father. I touched it and I cried. I was another visitor, and I was reacting to it as I had designed it. Then, on October 13, a Vietnam vet appeared before the Commission of Fine Arts and called Maya Lin's design a black gash of shame. He had hit a nerve. The design was hard to understand, and journalists propelled anti-memorial accusations, most notably that it was unheroic, unpatriotic, below ground, and death-oriented, into a civil war among vets. VVMF reassurances that the memorial would be exposed to sunlight all day, and that the names as displayed in Maya Lin's design would speak eloquently of sacrifice, commitment, and patriotism, never attracted as much attention as the attacks. On January 4th, 1982, even though more than 650,000 people had contributed more than $5 million to build Maya Lin's design, a letter from Secretary of the Interior James Watt arrived. The memorial would not get a construction permit and was on hold until further notice. That night, Scruggs went to the site and walked over to the Lincoln Memorial. They were losing their memorial. How did it happen? The competition had been fair. No one had complained. The jury had done a good job. After the negative publicity, art critics had gone back and examined all 1,421 entries. They had concluded that Maya Lin's was by far the most brilliant. Scruggs looked up at Lincoln. Was the dream about to die? The Civil War had been America's bloodiest conflict, and yet the memorial carried no sense of violence. It was non-political. Nothing favored the North or the South. Nothing said that slavery was morally wrong or that the Civil War was right. Like Maya Lin's design, it provided a sense of history. It was simple and it relied on words. People would read Lincoln's Gettysburg Address and Second Inaugural Address, think about the words, stand quietly, and let the feelings flow. They could come away different than when they arrived. Maya Lin's design would do the same thing. Its words were the names. Even those who wanted glory had only to pick a name at random. Who could deny the glory in a young man willing to risk and give his life for his country? The memorial would be built. Let the American people come with their children. Let the children ask tough questions. Who are these names? What did they do? Why did they die? Did you know them? What does it mean to me? After several lengthy emotional meetings, a compromise was reached. A flag and a representational statue would be added, and opponents would withdraw their objections. The sculpture eventually selected 38-year-old Washingtonian Frederick Hart had been the highest placing sculptor in the original competition. Hart's selection symbolized how the country was pulling together. The wall and statue would come from a woman too young to have experienced the war, and a man who never served in the military and said he had been gassed in an anti-war demonstration. The names, I'm just going to skip over, I'm not going to read it all. The names were also at the center of a dispute between Maya Lin and the vets. Her design called for names to be listed in the order of the day they died. She argued that this was essential to her design. The wall, she said, would read like an epic Greek poem. Vets could find their story told, and their friends remarked in the panel that corresponded to their tour of duty. Locating specific names with the aid of a directory would be like finding bodies on a battlefield. Some vets initially disagreed. If nearly 60,000 names were scattered along the wall, anyone looking for a specific name would wander around for hours and leave in frustration. One solution seemed obvious: list everyone in alphabetical order. But the vets examined a 2-inch thick Defense Department listing of Vietnam fatalities. Their thinking changed. There were over 600 Smiths, 16 people named James Jones who had died in Vietnam. Alphabetical listing would make the memorial look like a telephone book engraved in granite, destroying the sense of profound, unique loss each name carried. The vets admitted Maya Lin was right. The vets, along with the American public, discovered the wall. At night, they used matches, cigarette lighters, and torches made from rolled newspapers to find names. Volunteers stayed until dawn, passing out flashlights. One father struck match after match and then said to his wife in a hushed voice, "There's Billy." On Saturday, November 13, Vietnam vets marched down Constitution Avenue to the memorial in one of the largest processions the nation's capital had seen since John F. Kennedy's funeral. Following speeches by dignitaries, the crowd sang "God Bless America" and paused for a moment of silence. "Ladies and gentlemen," Jan Scruggs said, "the Vietnam Veterans Memorial is now dedicated." The tightly packed mass surged forward, crushing fences erected for crowd control. As thousands of hands strained to touch names, a lone GI climbed to the top of the wall, put a bugle to his lips, and played taps slowly. Between each note, people seemed frozen, stunned by emotion. Nearby, another vet thrust a sign into the ground. "Honor the dead, fight like hell for the living," it said. All afternoon, all night the next day, and the next, and the next, for an unbroken stream of months and years, millions of Americans have come and experienced that frozen moment. The names have a power, a life all their own. Even on the coldest days, sunlight makes them warm to the touch. Young men put into the earth, rising out of the earth. You can feel their blood flowing again. Everyone, including those who knew no one who served in Vietnam, seems to touch the stone. Lips say a name over and over and then stretch up to kiss it. Fingertips trace letters. Perhaps by touching, people renew their faith in love and in life, or perhaps they better understand sacrifice and sorrow. "We're with you," they say, "we will never forget." Thank you.
This next young gentleman I do not know well. I know he lives in an idyllic place in Glenora, and he has a talented wife and children, and maybe he puts on lovely house concerts and once did something very mysterious at CBC. That may or may not be true. David, I picture it, David, because I don't know the answer, that perhaps you were like the Wizard of Oz and you're just pulling the strings and keeping it all running. I don't know. David Binkow, ladies and gentlemen. Did I say your name right? Binkow, sorry.
All right. So when my son was 2 years old, I wrote about 50 poems. We were living in California at the time, and I'm going to give it to him when he's 18. And he's 14 now, and he's producing an event here tomorrow afternoon for teens, U19, the teen music scene. This is his third one. All right. This one's called The Good Stuff. And these are going to be given to him. May worldly wisdom fill your heart, Buddha, Rumi, Mr. Rogers. May medical know-how heal your body, acupuncture, eardrops, nightly flossing. May global cuisine thrill your buds, farmers markets, backyard arugula, take-out Thai. May musical exchanges delight your ears, Yo-Yo Ma, Ali Farkatori, Rafi. May indelible images enchant your eyes, Chagall, Fellini, Where's Waldo? May modern science expand your mind, string theory, plate tectonics, silly putty. May Mother Earth soothe your soul, desert flowers, old-growth redwoods, mud puddles. All right. This one, morning bed is best. Light comes through the shade, dreams begin to fade, climb into our bed unmade. No rush to get dressed, fresh from nightly rest, morning bed is best. Pulling up the sheet, sharing body heat, someone has cold feet. Hiding under covers, cuddling one another, you're jumping on your mother. Doing silly wiggles, can't stop the giggles, your big belly jiggles. Reading Dr. Seuss, talking to your moose, pleading for some juice. Don't look at the clock, hurrah for Dr. Spock, the day begins to knock. Time for work and play, let's buy a breakfast tray. In bed, we want to stay. And I'll do one more here. I've given him, I think, 2 of them on different birthdays, but he's never seen the whole thing. So, and this is called Another Boy. In Kabul, another boy just as sweet, no mommy, playing in rubble, familiar with the color of blood, sleeping to the sounds of war. Across the world, you camp for fun, you finger paint, you rest on organic cotton sheets. In Tijuana, another boy, just as smart, no mommy, no daddy, born with HIV, living on the street, dying to get out. Across the border, you see Dr. Perlman for well-child visits. You take warm baths, you watch Elmo. 5 miles away, another boy, just as eager, no daddy, nothing for breakfast, babysat by television, afraid to cry. Across the city, you eat organic veggies, you go to music class, you start the day with a family hug. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Well, no surprise to hear that Simon is hosting that tomorrow. He's quite the young man. How old was he when he leapt up on the Folk Fest stage? 5? Really? That's amazing. Whoops. Now, wait a minute. We're getting there. And thank you for being such a great audience. We don't usually have this many, but it is exciting. And thanks for your rapt attention. Nick, did you want to share something? No, I haven't forgotten, Keith. No, good. Well, I mean, not good, but thank you. And now we come to some of our grizzled, lovely veterans. And my apologies to these gentlemen for making them wait so long. I much appreciate their many contributions. So, Keith, you're right. Maybe I know you're nervously awaiting your moment there. Did you bring something tonight, Keith? Okay. Sorry, I've been sweating you this long. Sorry.
thank you, Bill. Bill, at least for acknowledging that I do have awful, I don't know what to call it, I don't know, stage fright or something, but just, it doesn't seem to be too many things to me more terrifying than, you know, a stage, a microphone, and a person. No deck of cards or instrument or book. I thought, when I went back there to the bathroom, I thought about lighting a fire back there in order to avoid having to come up here, actually. So someone asked me if I would do a story, recite a story that I did here several months ago. I don't usually like to do that kind of thing unless maybe it's like a year later or something. But then I thought, well, I went back to my journal. Well, thanks, Mark. That's really helping me a lot. But I did add to the story. I went back to my journal. This is a true story, which I always try to tell a true story if I'm telling a story. Went back to my journal and added about a third to the thing. So I think it's about, I don't know, I haven't timed it. It could be 3.5 minutes long, so I better not waste too much time. But, well, yeah, this is a story about when I was living with an ex-girlfriend, and we need a name, so I'll just pull something out of a hat. Susan. So I was living with Susan, and at one point, Susan's aunt and uncle were coming to have dinner with us. They came from North Carolina, Dave and Marlene, Uncle Dave and Aunt Marlene. So before they arrived, they were coming only for dinner, not for the night, but before they arrived, Susan told me that their oldest son, who was then in his late 20s, was going through gender transition, or what they called at that time, the family called a sex change. So she said to me, whatever you do, do not mention the sex change. Dave apparently is not handling it well, Uncle Dave. So Dave and Marlene arrived, and Dave was not tall, very stocky with a sort of blonde brush cut, severe haircut, a sort of an anvil-shaped head. And he had, the most pronounced feature was blue eyes that sort of bugged out, especially when he got intense, which was all the time. So we've had dinner. We're just kind of finishing up dinner, and I've managed to avoid saying sex or change in any context at all, together or separate. And Dave says to me, well, Keith, what do you say we let the girls straighten up a little here? You and I take a cognac out on the deck. So we're on the deck about 15 seconds, and Dave says to me, Keith, I guess Susan has told you we lost a son? I said, wow, Dave. Yeah, she did mention the situation. How has that been for you? He said, Keith, I'll tell you, it blows the hair right off your ass. It just blows it right off. You know, Keith, I try hard, but this goddamn AC/DC stuff is just crazy. So, but an hour or so later, we're back inside. We're sitting around the coffee table having some wine and brandy and talking. And Marlene, I guess emboldened by booze, decided to mention how wonderful she thought it was that the schools are currently delving a lot deeper into sex education and particularly gender issues. So it was like she decided to pull the pin on the hand grenade that's Dave. And he goes off. Dave goes off. He said, Jesus Christ, Marlene. All right. Keith, Susan, Marlene has heard this, but I would like you to hear it as well. I was 12 years old, out in the yard playing football with friends. My dad called me in out of nowhere. He calls me and he says, David, son, do you know about the birds and the bees? I said, no, sir, I don't think so. He says, right then, son, now listen, David. As you know, you have got you a front bum and a back bum. Now, that back bum, the shit bum, son, David, that is the only thing God ever intended for that bum, okay? There is no other intention for that one. Son, there is one vital exception to that rule. That is that at some point as you get older, your physician is going to want to probe that area. Now, David, even under these professional circumstances, it is absolutely vital that you maintain extreme vigilance. For example, son, if at any time during this probe your heightened awareness should indicate to you that both of the physician's hands are free and visible, particularly, son, if those hands should happen to be resting upon the back of your shoulders. Now, David, at this point, you would draw only one conclusion. Something has gone radically wrong. Likewise, David, at this point, you would take only one course of action. You must immediately, decisively, and by any means necessary, physically disengage from this person. Vacate the premises, seek further medical attention. Now, son, David, listen up, because here it comes. That front bum, son, that is also the one that makes the babies. Now, we good? You got this? Attaboy. You going back out to your game now. Right on, son. Now, Marlene, Keith, Susan, I ask you, is there one goddamn shred more bit of information than this that any child would ever need? I don't think so. Oh, Keith, it's like I said, it just blows the hair right off. Thank you. I need to qualify a little bit. Uncle Dave, who I called after they left, I always called him Psychedelic Dave after that. But I mean no judgment in any way upon any person with that story. It just is what it is, was what it was, and thank you.
Whoa. So we're well, it's down to you two, and Mark, you've got a book to read from. You said, is that right? Don't start with me. No. I think I was going to try to be nice because you and I have, what do they call that? Well, we decided at the beginning of the thing that even stubborn grown men can change. Is that what we're thinking? Yeah. Okay, come on. I'll say no more.
Before I get to reading, I was telling Bill tonight when I was like, I don't know, yay high. My parents went out. This was back in Regina days when I lived in Regina, and my parents went out, and God, I hope I don't leave that gum there. Okay, if somebody comes up afterwards and I've left it there, no. My parents went out. My sister and myself and my grandfather were in for the evening, and my sister served us ice cream for dessert. And for some reason, I decided suddenly I wanted to know what it was like to eat like a dog, so I was lapping up my ice cream. And this drove my sister batty beyond means. And we got involved in this great struggle for my ice cream dish. And into that, my grandfather interjected himself, and then he tripped and fell And when my parents got home, my sister ratted me out, and my parents made me go and apologize to my grandfather. Only I remember, so from an early age, hating apologizing. Fuck, I hate apologizing. It's because I'm sure I stood by his bed, like he was like, eyes were closed, but I stood there, I'm sure, for 50 minutes. It's a long time for a kid to stand there for 50 minutes and not apologize, because I was just thinking to myself, it's your own fucking fault, grandfather. If you hadn't jumped into the battle, you wouldn't have gotten hurt. And I was relating this story to Bill because Bill and I had a bit of a tussle earlier this spring, and I got my nose out of joint, and he got his nose out of joint, and we were discussing that tonight. And I said, I really don't like apologizing. And he was going like, yeah, me neither. So anyhow, we buried the hatchet. Felt like without having to apologize. Neither one of us apologized. It was great. But I do have a lot of that going on in my life right now. So what those things, there are things in your life that will just come back at you again and again and again, right? And that's why you come back as a frog in your next life. So I'm going to read the 2 or 3 poems by Tony Hoagland. Tony Hoagland, I have read many times before. And Tony Hoagland died about 4 weeks ago, 4 or 5 weeks ago, of cancer. He's about 51 years of age. But I love Tony Hoagland. So I'll start off with Playboy. Those Playboy magazines my father imported into the house in 1968 and kept in the big wicker basket in the den, except for the latest issue, which he placed in the black wire rack under the bathroom sink. What did my 30-year-old mother think of them? Those other women appearing there one day with that sleepy, voluptuous expression as if they had just been hatched from eggs, fully formed and yawning, smelling of milk and lotion. This was before the sisterhood concept had really gotten off the ground, so I'll bet my mom didn't see Miss April as an exploited poker chip in the historical casino of sexual capitalism. And how could she sympathize with Miss December, that dimwit accidentally caught out in the snow wearing nothing but a fluffy bunny tail and 5-inch heels? Maybe she wiped away a sparkle of urine where the seat had been left down again. Maybe she said to herself out loud, housework times fornication divided by taken for granted equals decades of burnt meatloaf. I wish she had, but I doubt it. I wish I could go back and defend her from her life, whose door at that moment was slowly drifting shut. I wish I could know what those hours were like in the empty, air-conditioned house when no one was around to watch, the wall clock making its loud talk, her life slipping into its socket with a click, some stranger in the bathroom showing her tits. It was a lonely life for a girl just starting to get suspicious about the way the world was stapled together, holding a boys' magazine in her hand, feeling the beginning of her own invisibility and pulling her robe a little tighter. Good people. On the way to the wedding of his friend, his car struck a dog, and he had no time to stop. But he's a good person. She's a good person who wrote an excellent essay from a young man's point of view for her son's college application. He's a guy with a few $1,000,000 whose condo on a Caribbean island I have been invited to enjoy. I have a strong intuition that he's a good person. She likes to say that everything happens for a reason. That's how you can tell she's a good person. He's a good person, though you would not want to be stuck with him in a lifeboat in the middle of the ocean, or to be a member of his immediate family or anywhere around him when he is drinking. He was a good person who, through a sequence of unfortunate circumstances, found himself in a Nazi uniform in 1943 working the front gate at Bergen-Belsen. She's a good person if, in the future, it finally became legal to eat poor people and you could buy inexpensive cuts of meat in the local store's glass refrigerated cases. Even if this became a very popular practice, she would find a way to politely decline the opportunity. I know a carrot from a stick. I can tell the difference between a stalactite and a stalagmite. I know the African elephant has smaller ears than the Indian. But would I really recognize a good person if I met one? He goes on talking and talking, and after a while you realize there may be a good person hidden somewhere inside him, slowly evolving like a fetus inside a womb, but it is not visible yet. In the meantime, we have to deal with the other person, the wounded, squirrely one. That's the person we need to keep an eye on. That's the one we need to give our full attention. And finally, the romance of the tree. It wasn't the dream of the enormous spruce tree to be turned into 50 reams of paper, then stacked and cut and bound into 4x6 format pages and printed with the sentences of a seething hot romance novel called Summertime Nurses. Season after season, while the tree was growing tall, while it breathed and swayed among its brethren, other trees, it wasn't dreaming of becoming the delivery device for a steamy bedroom episode in which the small, deft hands of someone named Brittany unbuttoned her jeans with feverish impatience. O tree, you were part of the forest for years, bending and straightening and bending like the mast of a great ship, tasting the earth with your long, dark roots. That was a different story indeed from the one printed on page 38, in which the exchange student from Norway enters the dark lounge of the Carterville Inn and just stands there like Apollo by the Budweiser sign, inflaming the entire female populace of Tweedy County. When the tree was cut down and hauled away to the mill to be turned into summertime nurses, we lost part of our Eden, worth more than a paperback. The tree, swaying all day in the sun, rocked and pushed by the wind, yielding and tussled under the white clouds, with all of its arms outstretched, all of its mouths wide open. Come. Tony, hold on.
Thank you, Marcus. I love you despite your many faults and mine. Oh, that felt good. Who needs therapy? He's got the gum. He did leave out one very important line in his story, though, Mark. You left out the line where your sister said to your parents, Mark tripped Grandpa, which is just what a sister would do, isn't it? Oh, they can be devious. I think that's close, and I won't tease John because he's been so patient, and you've been a great audience in your quiet listening. John, many valuable contributions on your part, and welcome to the stage. And you wore a special hat for the birthday.
Well, I'm going to be unapologetic, and I'm not going to read, and I'm going to improvise, and I'm going to try to drag everything together that just about everybody said. Wouldn't that be tough? In 5 minutes. 6, thank you. Thank you, Bob. A very generous man. I can't guarantee it'll be all. I just returned from a trip to Israel, and it's a very long sort of spiritual story about why I wanted to go there. It was for spiritual reasons, and as it happened, about 2.5 years ago, I met this woman that I have been living with for quite some time now, and it turns out that she lived and worked in Jerusalem for the Archbishop of the Jerusalem Diocese, which looks after the Middle East. And she was a member of it's called the Canadian Companions of the Diocese of Jerusalem. And through her, I had my opportunity to go to Jerusalem and Israel, as I had internally felt I must do since about 1973, which actually was the time of the Arab oil embargo. And just before we left, she said that it would be really good if I went to the MP's office and got these little Canadian flag pins. And so I got a crap load of those and had a little pouch, and I was handing them out like candy, and people seemed real happy about that. And then we went to Gaza. And, you know, I'm sure we've all heard about Gaza one way or another. Walking in from the Israeli side is like going into a penitentiary. Lots of steel bars and glass, and young fellows walking around with automatic weapons and holstered guns, and it's a long way from Jesus and Muhammad, but an integral part of the whole thing. I was traveling with the Archbishop of the Anglican Church of Canada, the Bishop of the Diocese of Vancouver, a scholar and professor at McGill who studied ancient Hebrew, and the Global Relations Officer for the Anglican Church. And Deborah, who was a member of this clan, and I was the token layperson. And at first I thought, I don't really know how I fit in any of this, but spiritually I'm on a quest. And Stephen's story about New Zealand and the Bay and the spilling of blood resonated. And we got through the Israeli security, then we had to go through the Palestinian Authority, then we had to go through Hamas, and that was almost Monty Python-esque, and they had a little trailer, like a container, a ship container as an office, and one guy looked like a biker, and the other guy looked like this really nervous accountant who was asking us who we were and why were we going there. So the purpose of our trip was to visit the Arab Ali Hospital in Gaza City, which is a Christian hospital. And we got there, and the first thing I noticed was what looked like bullet holes and up and down the masonry, and there was an apartment building across the street with a great big hole in it that I was later told was a rocket. And the worst of the violence was in 2014, the recent violence. And we met the head of the hospital. She was like 78 years old, Christian. The doctor, he was probably in his 70s. They've been doing this for 40 years. I asked them how many Christians were in Gaza, and they said 623. And I said, how many Palestinian Muslims? They said 2.5 million. And I said, so you're serving all these people? They say, we take in anybody. We don't care who they are, what they are. We are Christian. We are following in the path of Jesus and doing what Jesus would do. And you think about meeting spirits on earth. This woman's house had been bombed 3 times for her efforts, the doctor twice. They were saying how hopeful they were that the Egyptians had brokered a peace between the Israelis and Hamas, and they were very hopeful. It is the most hopeful they had been in years that maybe peace was coming to this place. And they were desperate. The unemployment rate was over 50%. They dealt with women's breast cancer was a big issue, and I can't go into why, but they had to educate people that it wasn't hereditary, and that because the mother got breast cancer, that the daughter would never marry because nobody would want her. And we're sitting at this table, and I got the head doctor here and the woman running the place. Her budget's $2.2 million US a year, and she's $600,000 in the hole. And during the festivities in 2014, there were 57 casualties that they took in, all with wounds from explosives. And she said it was just madness, and most of the people who worked in the hospital couldn't get there, and shrapnel from the air raids cut through their venting systems. And it just, I look at these 2 people and think, how do you do this? I have no idea. So the doctors, I had a couple of Canadian pins on my shirt, and he's like eyeing them. He's sitting right here. And finally he says to me, John, he says, do you have another one of those pins? And I said, well, of course, yeah. And actually by this time I was running out, so I was sort of rationing them, and I thought just people that are worthy can have these little tokens of Canadian. So he tells me when he was a kid and the Canadians were there and as part of the peacekeeping force that he remembered how kind the Canadian soldiers were, and the flag on there. And I was thinking, when were you a kid? Because we didn't get this flag till 67, so I don't know. But anyway, he just said he never forgot the Canadians, and could he have a pin? I said, well, of course you can. I gave him one, and I gave one to the lady. And I said, from me, it's the least I can do. And I just feel like a hanger-on. I'm with these people, and when I see what they're doing in the conditions that they work in, I'm so humbled and so overwhelmed by the generosity of their spirit that it's very difficult to take in. So we're walking around, and they're showing us some equipment that the Israelis finally let after 5 months of sitting in customs. They finally let it in. And then they're talking about their 30-year-old X-ray machine that's on its last legs, and they need another one, and blah, 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 And we get to this room. I guess I'm on Stephen's story again. And or you with the baby. So one of the employees, the women, had just had a baby, just like like 2 hours. So the director of the hospital and the head doctor hadn't seen her yet, so they just walk in the room and they go, come on in, like come and say hi, So these people don't speak English, and they're, all these people crowding into this little room, and there's this tiny little baby there, and I'm thinking the same thing, like, what's this baby gonna face, And the father was very wide-eyed and appreciative that the Archbishop of Canada came in and blessed his baby, and because he's a Christian too, and so I think they're worthy of a pin. So I gave the father a couple of pins and said, for your daughter, which they had named Julia, which is a Christian name and would be very difficult. Hamas and most Muslims are not very happy about Christians, and the Jews less happier with, I can't say the Jews, the Israelis, less happy with Muslims or Palestinians, and Christians, not so many of them anymore. So I gave, and the woman that had delivered the baby, the midwife, had been there for 40 years, and God knows how many babies she had delivered. And so I gave her a pin, and there were 3 doctors standing right behind her, and they're all looking at me kind of expectantly, like I'm going to give them a Canadian flag, and I didn't have many left, so I said, I'm sorry, but when you've got 40 years in, like this woman here, then I'll come back and give you a pin. And they all sort of smiled at me, but, I don't think they thought it was funny because they wanted a pin. It's sort of amazing, what effect a tiny little Canadian flag can have. See, I'm improvising. I was trying to think of something Mark said in one of the second thing you read. There was something that popped in. I thought, yeah, that fits. And of course, the whole thing about the Vietnam Memorial and the war that's been going on there. That line around Gaza was drawn in 1950. We went to Jordan after, and the guy said that in 1967 the population of Jordan was 7 million. After the 67 war, it was 11 million. 4 million Palestinians had to get out of Israel. And this is at the time that Donald's complaining about the 7,000 displaced Colombians approaching his border like they're being invaded. And I just thought, man, you really need to come in here and see what a humanitarian crisis is all about. The moral of the story, if there is one, no, there isn't. It was an overwhelming, and I'm still processing, and I'd written a whole bunch of stuff, and I didn't even know where to start, and so I just thought I'd try to bounce off some of the things everybody was saying in terms of we're all Canadians here, and we don't know how good we got it, and well, maybe we do, I don't know. You would know. And is my 5 minutes up yet? Yeah. So I hope that was sufficient for your long wait, and thank you very much.
Amazing story. I don't think I really got the significance of what your spiritual journey there was all about, but maybe you'll tell us that next month. Yes, good. Okay, thank you. Now, did I miss anybody? No, hopefully not. Thank you for all those wonderful, heartfelt contributions and all your patience and good listening. And for those of you who are new, I hope you'll come back. And sorry? Yes, John. Yeah. Yeah. Yes. How we conduct ourselves. Well, I sort of keep up a banter over the years, and I think that the thing is, John, that most people probably don't practice what they read. So I have to be a little lenient. And probably we don't really have an awareness of what 5 minutes is. The reason that I've been had that in mind, or had that as a rule of conduct, is sort of to conduct a whole evening so that people have some attention left to listen. And so it's not a hard and fast rule, but it's something that I put in place to hopefully make a rounded evening. What's that? It's a goal to strive for, yes, strive for. And Andrew, how do you handle that? Have you? I think early on we had some very uncomfortable situations where, an earnest writer came in and read a short story, and there was one instance where it went on to about 20 minutes, and a couple of people who had been waiting to read got up and left. So I felt that I should have something, a goal to strive for. That's right, Mark would walk out. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think nobody's perfect, and if somebody trickles into 7 minutes or 15, I don't know. I wasn't timing. But Andrew, what do you say? You've got a different style of Andrew and Rachel. Have you ever felt uncomfortable or felt that you had a need to? Oh, he left. Well, Rachel gets to speak. All right. What's your feelings? A David? What's a David? Oh, with David. Is he a good timer, you mean? Oh, David, what's your thought?
When I start feeling really uncomfortable,
Right.
my guess is other people are feeling uncomfortable.
Right.
So I jump in and say, look, we want a space where there's room for everyone, and
Mhm.
if someone talks a lot more.
This is going on just a little bit too long.
Yeah, I know that's probably a good way to handle it. And I, as bold as I am in many situations, I'm not good at that, but it's probably a good note. No, now don't go there. I don't. Nobody. Does that answer your question vaguely?
Go back and watch online.
We're gonna watch online in time. Yeah. Yeah.
Whether or not it's going to capture people. And I mean, I get up there and empathize, and I was going to put my stopwatch on my thing on.
Were you? Yeah.
I forgot. I would have done it. And when I say, tell me 5 minutes, like, I'm serious. If you got something to say and you don't like it, open your mouth. That's the way I feel about it. And some people don't know where that point is, and it needs to be pointed out.
Yeah, it's a bit more of an issue at a night like this where there's a lot of readers and your attention can only go so long. And I was teasing John about the night that he hosted, but I realized that there weren't that many readers. And funnily enough, you yourself probably read about 10 minutes. So, and I only knew that because I was watching online, and you probably weren't aware of how long it.
I had that time that was just maybe 6 minutes. That was. I reduced it.
We could pull it up, John. It was actually 10 minutes. So yeah, you don't. It's hard to have an idea of how long it is. So I.
That's another point too, Bill, about how many people there are. And
Yeah.
we took a poll and said, look, there's only a few of us.
Right.
We want to go over. Otherwise, it's over in half an hour.
That's right.
Victoria, I don't want to be here for half an hour.
No. So in that case, it was appropriate to have. But thank you very much, Mister. We do go for a beer afterwards, if you'd care to go for a beer and have a discussion. I hope I half answered that. I don't know. Yeah. Thank you, David. Good point. Thank you all again, and thanks very much to Longevity John, who fomented this idea 11 years ago. Thank you, John. Hopefully, we'll see you all again. Good night.